to do this comprehensive study and the hours that it will take, and is well documented in his report. It's $15,000. Our financial director has told me we have money in our, what account are we taking this from? CNRE. We're thinking about another account, but CNRE, we were thinking about spreading this over 2 years, but we can get this job done. We can do it this year. The report would take 90 days to prepare. It's not going to change the budget going forward, but we'll have a very crystal clear outlook of where we should be.
Mark, Kevin Lyden did something similar to this up in Salem a couple of years ago. He hired I'm sure it wasn't the same firm, but they did a very good objective view of the needs of the town. And, and one thing I've never heard anybody in town have any adverse remarks about is the quality of service provided by our emergency responders, be it police, fire, ambulance. I think we have very fortunate to have the people we do. But I think Chief Lewandowski pointed out something when he was talking at the about putting the fire hydrants up on Cardinal Lane. He said, if you have the people there, you can take care of the fire. The problem that the study in Salem showed was that over the next several years, the volunteer pool is shrinking. Training requirements are going up and up and up. So if someone wants to be a volunteer firefighter now, it's not just show up once a month for a couple hours. There's a lot of training involved to get certified and maintain your certifications. I think it's a great way to look. And we're not looking just at this month or this year. We're looking at what's it going to be like in 5 and 10 years, so that we have a blueprint to how to proceed as we move down. And as all the studies show, our community is graying a little bit. There's going to be a lot more seniors, which will put more needs on the emergency services. Right. Also with some of the development being done. So I understand why you're wishing to do that.
The frustration in sitting in the big seat here is you can't just go to the next town over and go, well, this is how they do it. Let's do it that way. What works in Old Saybrook with an all-volunteer fire department, and their volunteer numbers are increasing or have increased. I'm not sure they're still trending that way anywhere in the country right now. What works there doesn't necessarily work here. What works in Old Lyme doesn't work here. What Kevin Lyden did in Salem might not work here.
Oh, no, I'm just saying he did that study, which identified some of the needs.
That's why we need to specifically not just copy a model, but have a model developed for us specifically for this town. So thank you for bringing that up. You okay? Questions, concerns?
This includes emergency management services.
Correct. Ambulance as well, even though they are an independent company, but there is a relationship with ambulance, of course, that they're in our fire buildings and use our fire personnel for most of the daylight shifts. So it's a comprehensive overlook.
And I noticed that their estimate is 8 weeks.
Yeah, eight to, and again, it depends. They're going to be working with our town and scheduling meetings and plank owner meetings and department head meetings appropriately. So it depends on everybody's schedule. But I had an actual interview with them today, and it'll be, I think more realistically, it's 90 days.
Well, I think in view of your comments about the increasing changes to the needs, the large part this plays in the budget, the capital requests, it makes a great deal of sense to look at this holistically, to see that we're doing the best with taxpayer dollars and taxpayer safety. And I, like you, was pleasantly surprised at the reasonable cost given the scope of the work.
Yes, indeed. I got to tell you, the frustrating part as well is, we're citizens, and we're citizens of various industries, and so are the Board of Finance members. And what do we know about fire safety? And so when the next truck is proposed to us, or the next thermal camera infrared thermal camera, and we don't know anything about it. You know, we do our part and our due diligence, and we learn about these things. But still, having an independent survey or independent study to go back to year after year and go, okay, this is what our needs are, and we're fulfilling those needs as laid out in the study, I think will be comforting to all of us to have to make these big decisions. So,
I concur with what everyone said. I'm thankful you're taking this initiative. I think it'll be good for us to get all this information for ourselves at this board too, to educate ourselves on what the needs are on moving forward. So I definitely support this, and I'm pleased that the two fire chiefs are on board too. It seems like everyone's on the same page. So moving forward, this is a positive step.
When you look at it, our fire chiefs are doing this on a part-time basis. They don't get compensated for all the work they have to do, and I don't foresee either one of them doing less. They'll probably be doing more,
Right.
knowing both of them in this. So anyway, make the following motion. Move to approve and transfer $16,005 from CNRE Fund 32, account 32-70-300-500-999, townwide project, to an account to be established titled Fire Department Service Assessment, to retain the services of J.L. and Associates to perform this work and forward to the Board of Finance for approval. This will
Second.
require a town meeting.
yeah, so we'll go to Board of Finance, and then we'll go to town meeting. It's been seconded, ma'am?
Yes.
Any further comment? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Fantastic, thank you, folks. Mr. Salerno will update us on the blight ordinance work that we have been working very hard on, our town attorneys, Mr. Salerno, Mr. Mulholland, and we're at a place now where input is needed, required, and to move this forward. Mr. Salerno.
So as promised, everyone should have got it in their packet. This has been worked a few times. This is based on, we had to revise it based on the latest Connecticut Journal statutes. Bottom line is we were trying to tread lightly here with this. This is a very complicated, everyone should know this is a very complicated and can be costly ordinance to go through if we have to go through all these final steps, but it's the only way we could actually have any action against blighted properties. There are some tools that we have right now in zoning and the building code, but it doesn't necessarily address all the issues with blight. So just quickly, just a quick synopsis, hopefully everyone got to read it. This affects public and private property, so the town is not, they have to comply to this as well. Most of this came from the Connecticut Journal statutes. We did not go crazy. Some towns, as you know, most towns in the state have this. We are one of the few towns that don't. And it's all over the map of what they do. Some control the length of grass and stuff like that. We opted not to do that. We're trying to look at seriously blighted properties. We don't want to be harassing our neighbors, but we're looking for the serious offenders here. I don't know if I want to go, do you want me to go through everything, or did everyone kind of take a look at it?
It's been in our packets. If we could,
Okay.
you're following the Connecticut general statutes as laid out. So there are certain things we have to do, and the way it's set up, especially when
That's
you get
right.
into the enforcement citations and the section 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's
A
all
lot of that's just
dictated to us.
dictated from the state statutes. But I will say there's a couple things I wanted to bring up for discussion here. And first of all, let me give you a little how it works. Is we will have to, once if this gets approved, we will need to assign a blight enforcement officer. That can be either the zoning official, the building official, or even a fire marshal. That'll be somebody that can work for the town. It's a town official. The blight blight hearing officer. So the blight enforcement officer will receive complaints and will then issue citations for blighted properties. If the person wants to contest that, then they're entitled to a hearing. That goes to a blight hearing, and we need to appoint a blight hearing citation officer. This is someone in town that cannot be a policeman in town. It's more somebody that doesn't work for the town. It's more of an ex-lawyer or somebody that could really run a meeting would be qualified for that position. And then the third one is the lien officer. So if there is a lien provision here, if liens are levied, then that usually falls upon the lien officer would be the tax collector. Some of the things we went through exemptions, as I talked about before, was working farms. We went through many permutations looking at the state definition of farms. And the best definition we found was actually right out of the zoning regulations. So you'll see that there. The historic properties, we put that in there. I don't know that it's necessary, but we kept it in here just for discussion. I don't think we have any problems with our historic properties, but it's in here for discussion. The other thing for discussion, and the special considerations, not everyone has the special considerations. As we were going forward, when you do a little research on this, a lot of these blighted properties are people that are incapable of correcting the problem. So we wanted to have some leniency in it. And you'll see that, and we have definitions of a disabled individual, elderly, or low income. And this ordinance does give some room for the hearing officer to work with that person. And it even says, if needed, assistance in finding solutions will be offered by the town. Meaning that we may reach out to third parties or such. The penalty, the state allows up to $100 per day. We put in there 10 for right now. We could talk about this. If you were to charge $100 per day, that could end up being tens of thousands of dollars if the person doesn't comply. Now, it's nice to have a strong hand with that, and to really make a steep penalty for not complying. But I thought that was a little too steep. And talking to town attorney, she's been to a few meetings when they're discussing this, and some of the current thinking is not to make it so severe, because if you make it so severe, you're probably unlikely to ever get paid and end up in litigation for a long time. So we wanted to make it something reasonable that the person would be more likely to pay it or to actually do it. And since this is first shot out of the at this ordinance, I would recommend that we keep it low. I mean, we could keep it to 20, but $10 is $3,600 a year if you're not complying. That's where that came from.
Yeah, I called Mr. Salerno after reading this and asked about the $10, and he explained it just as eloquently as he did tonight. I just think that if a fine is too low, then there's no motivation to make the change, and litigate they will. And after a whole year, you're only $3,000 into it, right? Let's see, 350 times, yeah. Versus making it a stiff penalty, and yes, those penalties can be leaned upon. We can lien the property. Right. We're not looking to make money here, but if a parking fine is only 50 cents, I might just park in that parking spot and pay the 50 cents. If it doesn't hurt.
How about something graduated? Because sometimes with offenses, especially motor vehicles, the first offense might be low. The second one ratchets up. Maybe for the first 30 days it stays at $10, and then after that it raises up a little bit.
Even the first 3 months, the second 3 months.
Yeah, something like that.
We didn't even consider that.
That's the only thing I was thinking, because like cell phone usage, the first offense is $150, it doubles for the second, and so forth. Maybe that give.
Well, this is under the same offense, though. But
the same. Yeah, it's the same. But it's
non-compliance.
Non-compliance the first 30 days, because the person, especially if the person is of meager means anyway. If you're hitting them at $100 a day, they're never going to be able to afford that. They might as well say, "Well, right. I'm not going to do it all." But
it's counterproductive.
Right, I'm just going to keep fighting it.
Yeah. I think Mark had a good point. The first selectman had a good point. 90 days, then it goes over 90, and then it goes 10 to
you could do
50 to 75.
$10 a day for the first 3 months, and then you could go up to 50 for or whatever. But I think that idea for increasing the penalty for noncompliance is not a bad
I think that makes good sense. I mean, you want to give an individual an opportunity. First, you're putting them on notice that there's a problem.
Yep.
And then in that initial period, let's say 3 months,
they get 60 days.
There's some penalty, but something that they can live with. And maybe that gets them going on fixing the problem. But then if they totally ignore you and say, you know what, too bad, I'm not even going to do it, then it gets stiffer. And you do have in the statute, the way you've drafted it, the right to put a lien on the property, which is an easy remedy for the town. And eventually, sooner or later, they're probably going to get paid if there's a lien sitting there on the property. So I think that's a wise suggestion. I would certainly support having graduated.
Once there is, let's be clear, once there is a citation, there's a 60-day period where they have that time
That's right.
to clean the property, or
Or to
just
appeal.
have,
Or to appeal. It can be a lengthy process.
Or frankly, in this town, just have a conversation with someone saying, I'm going to do my best to, it might take me more than 60 days, but this is going to happen. This is why it has to take a little bit longer than 60. I think we're all going to say, well, good, let's work together. In the case where it's, you mentioned a poverty situation, elderly, et cetera, within that 60 days, a conversation could take place that we get the Interact Club, the Leo's Club, or the Lions, or the
Eagle
Rotary,
Scout
to
who
come
needs
out
a project
and
or
help
something.
help an elderly person with their property. There are plenty of volunteers in this town that would step up and say, "Oh, you have a need. Well, we'll fix that need." So
So I would be okay with that.
Graduated?
If we do $10 for the first 90 days and 50 after that, I hedge not to go over 50 just because when you get
Yeah.
That
into
makes
20.
50 is pretty steep on a daily.
I think
Wanna
it's
go-
on a
you wanna
daily
go
basis.
90 days. Or you want to go even 6 months?
I think 90 days is good. I mean,
Because
Because
they
it's-
have 60,
You got the 60,
plus,
right.
plus another
Plus,
90.
there's
that's
plenty of
5
time.
months.
Yeah.
And if they're starting to show progress,
Progress, yeah.
you're not going to get fined. That's the hearing officer takes care of all that. The other thing that was not in here, is the option for the town to come and clean it up, and then lien the property for the. So if there is a property in town, there's certain situations in town where the town can go and clean up a property, a building, if it's deemed a hazard or whatever like that, and then it gets liened, but not necessarily for blighted properties. We could put a provision in here to allow for the cleanup, and then, so if it's in the best interest of the town, nothing's happening, we could give the town the opportunity, with permission of the owner, to clean it up and then lien the property. There's also that avenue. And I was talking to our town attorney, and she said we could write a paragraph for that if we did want that.
Mark, when you were doing this, did you talk to other towns about how effective, this is in actually improving blighted properties? I mean, does it work, or is it mixed?
It's mixed. It can be a very frustrating process. I don't know if Montville has one. I don't know if they've enforced one yet.
I think they just passed them, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Part of the problem is the way the statute's written, and CCM is working very hard. And actually, our legislature
the
is working
state
very hard, the
statutes?
state statutes, to change this whole bureaucratic way of the appeal, the hearing officer and all that. And there's great pressure for the state legislature to change the statute to be more workable in favor of the towns.
So after you go through the hearing, and then you could have, and if you still disobey that, then that goes to Superior Court, and then it goes into the whole court system. So you could see how it could potentially be very costly and effective. Hopefully, the way we have it written, it's enough just to get people to comply, that we don't have to go through the lengthy process. And I agree. And that was one thing that kept coming up, that they were going to change it at the last session. I guess that didn't happen. So they may change again, but based on what we have now, and assuming nothing's going to change, this is what the statutes allow us to.
So your mention of the town, with the agreement of the homeowner, the town could go in, so say it was in such a state that it was a hazard to health or something like that, or the owner has no money
It could
but
be that.
agrees it has to be fixed.
Let's say somebody has a building that's close to a town sidewalk or something like that, and it's devaluing property and we can't go anywhere, and maybe it's cheaper, maybe the guy has no means, whatever, to do that. So it would allow the town to say, in lieu of your fees, we'll go clean it up and we'll be liening you. And that would be more under the special considerations of somebody that's low income disability.
We have that availability now through other means.
Condemnation.
Condemnation of the property. Building inspector has a lot of power, not through blight, but through, the
That's right, and
what we
that-
did with the
But this is an intermediate phase
Yes.
before you get to
Yes.
condemnation.
Right.
And
'Cause
and you want to encourage, the individual
Correct.
to take care of the problem.
Right now, like if you have a building that's deemed unsafe, the building official could ask him to tear it down, but the owner could just rope it off. He has that right to do that. He can't necessarily get it cleaned up. So this will allow that. And again, we've talked about this, I think, Mark, you get complaints about this all the time. We're only,
the time.
there's probably
All the time.
5 or 6 on this list in town, so this is not,
Right.
Well, I just have it from my time on Board of Assessment Appeals, the number of times people come in and say, well, my assessment should be lowered because the person next to me has 17 rusty cars and so on and so
Correct.
forth. So it's obviously a frustration to, property owners here if they're living next door to
Right.
something when that situation is.
and it's unfortunate we even have to have something like this, but it's reality. And a lot of times, as people, Mark mentioned this to me, some of the complaints, people moved away, and the building's vacant. Frankly, nobody knows who's even maintaining it or
Right.
even,
Especially if it's
Yeah.
foreclosure, the bank owns it, but
right.
But yeah, we had a couple of those last year, and we still have a couple that are lingering. And it's not at the point it's coming. The building inspectors are going to come down and fix it because it's still a house, but
the
things
bank
are
may
going
own it.
into the house now, and
Right.
et cetera.
Who owns
So,
it? That's some.
where would you like to go with this, folks? We've got to
do you-
move this to a public hearing if we're going
Do
through
you-
the ordinance
Do
phase.
you want to bring it back with the changes made in terms of the graduated fines? And at that point, we could vote on it and.
We could do that, and we could have,
Well,
move it to a public
Public
hearing.
hearing.
so there's 2 options. We could ask town attorney and have Mark move forward, or we could wait one more meeting. I could have town attorney we'll go over that language, and then we'll give it back to us, and then we could schedule it.
That's my thinking, get it
I think that-
finalized.
get
with
it right first.
Get it
Get it- yeah.
right first,
Okay.
and then.
Well, let's do that
schedule
then.
the
Yeah.
public hearing.
Okay.
Is there any other comments, concerns?
I think that the power of the lien for work done, should it get to that level, is important too.
Yeah.
So adding that and then the graduated
Yeah.
fines.
Perfect.
And if we have anything that we think of, we can always
Yeah, just let me know.
let Mark.
Great.
Good job.
Nice
It was a
job.
really nice job.
Thank you.
Great, 5, did we
Wasn't there a
add,
guy right on the corner of Bridebrook and Route 1 that renovated and left a lot of stuff right along the curb? I'm joking, Mark, your house.
oh, that's Mark's house. You have budget books tonight, I
Yeah.
believe that's next on our agenda, is that
Yes.
when we
Yes.
slid
Budget
this?
book.
That's where you
I'm gonna
slipped
make
it
this
in.
brief, we hit our 2-hour mark already. So I'll give you a brief synopsis of the beginning of this, narration and the end of it, and then for your pleasure, you can ask some questions about it. But there's always a narrative that goes along with your budgets. I encourage you all to come in if you wish to talk about things. Well, of course, we have budget meetings that we'll have to schedule at the end of this tonight. I think the first one is coming up in 2 weeks, and we'll have to determine which departments should come in. But I present you the working draft of the Board of Selectmen. I worked hard with Finance Director Anna Johnson, bringing this town government budget to you at a 3.99%. This proposed level of funding, some departments will be forced to scale back certain services and operational procedures. Making cuts and finding efficiencies has become difficult with each passing year. Our departments are trim and efficient. There's little waste and not much extravagance. In fact, no extravagance. I look forward to and expect your input as we further fine-tune this budget plan for public approval. You'll find the driving force behind most of the increases in the department budgets are wages and benefits. In fact, when we start doing the math, it's about 3% of that 3.99 is direct wages, benefits, and insurance costs. Like workman's comp is also part of that, Equipment and enhancement spending is relatively flat throughout the town. I've encouraged our department heads to be leaders and plan for necessary enhancements needed to deliver quality town services going forward, yet we need to strike a balance between delivering these improvements and keeping our taxes to our citizens as low as possible, especially in this economy we find ourselves in this state. I'll jump down to some of the bullet points. An emphasis was placed on just maintaining existing public services, improving and upgrading our existing town infrastructure, like roads, and prevailing quality of life within the town. The chief building official specifically asked for a full-timer. He has a 28-hour right now part-time team that adds up to 28 hours a week for efficiency, for accountability, and for better management. It'd be better to have one person 30 hours a week. Of course, that job would come with benefits. So I'm increasing the hours by 2 hours a week, and including benefits. He'd be able to get someone who'd stick around and also be accountable. When we have 4 people going to different job sites and one person coming in and then another person coming into the same site, we're finding some contradiction in some of the inspections. And I know one of our selectmen had gone through that. Emergency management once again asked for a fifth full-time dispatcher, and I'm not recommending this right now. However, I have included extra funding for additional part-time hours to increase our personnel during those peak times during the week. Kind of like 4.5 dispatchers. So for now, we're not ready to commit to a full-time position, but statistics and increased activities point to a much-needed assistance. There are other departments like restoring the planning director with full-time status and creating a new position. GIS analyst and assistant planning director was requested like last year, but I cannot go forward with that right now. We're maintaining present levels throughout the next year as well, with Gary wearing 3 hats, if you will, down there. Parks and Rec Department, once again, it goes up because of the minimum wage increasing to $10.10 an hour effective this coming the January. So where possible, operating costs have been kept to a minimum, maintaining or decreasing the 2015-16 level of spending. Again, there's a graph on that second page. You okay? General government is 5.41%. The debt service goes down. Capital is at 9.54%. So the total town budget lies at 3.99%. The Board of Ed, although it's listed here, is at 4.56%. The other evening, they were already added 3.92% increase. So they've dropped that budget down a bit, and they're still working on bringing that to a lower amount. You'll see in the narrative, and I won't prolong this, you read through it, you'll do your due diligence, go over departments, and by all means, if you have specific questions, my door is open, and I would encourage you to ask the questions. You can do it here, you can do it one-on-one. We don't want to create a quorum issue in my office, but I can point you to some answers, or we can highlight some concerns that you might want to bring forward to individual department heads. Any questions?
And I know the answer to this is undoubtedly no, but this does not take into account anything that's going to happen in Hartford with regard to the $720 million that needs to be cut going forward.
That's correct. This is our expenditure side.
Yeah.
There's a revenue side, and some of that is taken up
in here, yeah.
with of course, and you'll get that, I think, at the next meeting, Anna. In 14 days, you'll get the revenue side of our budget added to your book. We'll talk about that. There was the budget by Governor Malloy came out today. Kind of level in a lot of places, a dip here and there, but we're hopeful that they keep their promises, as we have to keep ours to our citizens. Other questions, concerns? Ex officio reports, mind the time, keep them brief, and
In view of the hour and that, there's nothing that I need to report on. I'll pass.
Pass.
I did not have any meetings.
It was my first opportunity, and I wrote a book, but I'll.
oh boy.
I attended the Waterford East Lyme Shellfish Commission, and they were discussing a dock application for Cheney Park and where the best place to provide access for those that like to use the canoes and those other things, not canoes, what am I?
Kayak?
Kayaks, there
buddy.
you go. People that like to go kayaking and where the best access would be. And I think the feeling was that regardless of where that access is decided, it should not have any impact, or at least that's what I gathered, that it shouldn't be too much of a concern to the shellfish. And Smith Harris House, they're working on strategies to control costs and reduce heating costs at the Smith Harris House, and they're working on their budget. And that's about all I have.
That's right.
Okay,
She's-
I'll be quick. I attended the planning commission meeting last night. The bulk of the meeting consisted of a briefing by Town Attorney Ed O'Connell on the responsibilities, duties, et cetera, areas of governance of the planning commission, things to be aware of. And then a zoning referral with regard to the application from Whitegate Farm for a text amendments with regard to farm events and then bed and breakfast regulations. And they decided that they had not had sufficient time to consider their comments to zoning and have scheduled a special meeting for February 16th to discuss solely that, so they can then send their comments to zoning. And that's my report.
Great.
And before I forget, I know you're going to give a brief report. I've been asked by a number of people for updates on this proposed new railroad line that's going to run right through the middle of Old Lyme and Niantic and everything like that. So I just asked the first selectman when he has anything to report to please keep us in the loop.
My one question to that, and I didn't, I asked one question, and that was, do we get all our let me start that again. It's getting late. Do we get our seashore back? In other words, will they be abandoning the Amtrak rail that runs through the heart of our town? And the answer was no. They would keep that as an active rail as well. So I said, well, in that case, I'm not in favor of this line that would go up 95. It's a far-reaching report that does not plan for how they would ever spend it and how they would take all this land and knock over historic homes to do it,
Eminent domain.
what it
going
is a
crazy, yeah.
report.
Yeah.
What it is a report with no plan. So I'm not concerned, and I think Bonnie Ream Snyder, the first selectman in Old Lyme, had a great response and served her citizens well, and had great concerns about what it would do to Old Lyme and where it would go through East Lyme. I guess it would be along the highway, is what they're proposing. So it's a report. It's not a plan, and in no way is it funded. So that's where it will sit. Probably it's in a book on a shelf.
Okay,
That's
thank
my
you.
opinion. I don't have a report tonight. It's Mrs. Hardy's cough is bothering. It's concerning me, not bothering me. So I'd like her to get that cough drop and a glass of water and head home. I will say one thing: that EverSource has three main projects planned in 2016. Redoing the circuitry in big parts of our town. Flanders Road from Route 1 to Stop and Shop. Flanders Substation to the Old Lyme, which would be go down. That's the those are the high tension wires that cut through the Lovers Lane and through Gateway, and it goes out to Old Lyme, and then Flanders Road to Route 85. You're going to see trucks. You're going to see parts of roadways be stopped and congested through the summer months. This will start in April and